One of my favorite lines is like, hey, this is going to be uncomfortable, but guess what? We can do uncomfortable.
They're their own person. They're going through their own things. I'm going through my own things. I need to separate the two.
Want moms to understand that your main job is to be the safe place for them to land.
Welcome to the Hot Flash Health Podcast, where we're dishing out unfiltered truths about menopause with a side of sass and a sprinkle of grass.
Get ready to dive into the wild world of hot flashes, mood swings, and all of the other joys of being a queenager.
This ain't your grandma's podcast. No, we are here to talk our bodies, our fears, our passions, our desires, all while navigating this wild roller coaster ride of menopause.
So grab a glass of wine,
For free.
kick back, relax, and let's enjoy this hot flash wave together.
I'm Courtney Mamusha, and alongside me is my fabulous co-host, Dawn Fable.
We're just two outspoken broads who like to call it how it is.
Now, without further ado, let's kick off today's episode. Okay, everyone, welcome back to Hot Flash Health. Today, we're diving into a double whammy of hormonal chaos, which happens when moms are navigating menopause while their daughters are entering puberty. What a fun combo. Because let's be honest, when estrogen levels are plummeting in one body and skyrocketing in the other, things can get rather spicy. Our guest today is Deb Rubin, a licensed clinical social worker, parent coach, and expert in all things family dynamics, self-discovery, and communication. With over 20 years of experience, Deb has worked in therapeutic settings ranging from Planned Parenthood to the VA hospital, and now she runs the Mother-Daughter Journey, helping parents and kids navigate relationships, emotions, and all those messy life transitions that nobody gives a handbook for. She's here to help us communicate with our kids without losing our minds or our voices from all that yelling, and give us some game-changing strategies for keeping connections strong, even when hormones are trying to burn it all to the ground. So if you're a mom in a midlife crisis raising a hormonal mini-me, this episode is for you. Let's get started. So welcome, Deb.
That was a great introduction.
Well, we try and aim to please here. We've been trying to get you on for a while on the podcast. I'm so excited that you're here. Anybody who's one of our listeners knows that I have a 14-year-old daughter, so I am definitely in the midst of this hormonal imbalance, and it is so much fun. So welcome, Deb. We're so excited to have you.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here. And I love that you're talking about this kind of sandwich world that moms are in right now of going through menopause and parenting teens a lot of times that are just starting their menses journey, and then actually also taking care of elders all at the same time. Our generation has never been here before, so it's really a fascinating time to be a mother and a daughter.
It's a lot. It's a lot for sure. Well, let's start with the obvious. What inspired you to start the mother-daughter journey?
Such a good question. So I have been a therapist since, I've been a licensed therapist since 2006. Before that, I've always done kind of work with people. But the heart of my work was always around connection building. And for 17 years, I focused on couples and sexuality and individuals as well, big time, but all around how to form connection with other, connection with self, how to work with relationships in your work world, all of it. But the couples piece was really what I was known for. And I loved it so much. And I loved helping people really find ways to connect and learn different create new blueprints in their relationships. However, the pandemic really burned me out. And it was just really hard to work with couples at that time because everything was exacerbated. And I had started the mother-daughter journey a couple years prior to the pandemic. Then I really kind of focused my work on really helping mothers and daughters really understand and learn a new way of relating through workshops and individual work. And then in the last couple of years, I've actually expanded it to mothers, fathers, all genders. The workshops are still primary mother and daughter, but my private practice is all parents, all teens and tweens and connection. But to answer your real question of what was the start, I was actually coming out of a yoga class and I was sitting at a table having drinks with girls and everyone was talking about their teenage years. And this woman came over while we were sitting there and she was like, "Oh, do you have daughters?" And we all kind of nodded. And she was like, "Oh, just you wait, it's going to be awful. The drama, the this, the, and like super negative. And it kind of hit me that that's always been the message. Like it has to be super negative. And the movies show that, and all these elders were kind of projecting that. And I just had this moment of like, okay, what if it could be hard, but not super negative? What if we actually found a new paradigm to change the way we approached our girls, looked at them differently through a different lens, where we actually could see them as their own beings and not try and, make them mini me's, and also not have this fear-based approach when parenting them. And that's sort of when it hit me. I was like, I want to learn, I need support, I want to create a curriculum. I just want to understand. And then it kind of bloomed from there. And it's been a really, really awesome journey of watching moms just thrive and like understand that it can be hard, but it doesn't have to be brutal or super negative.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, there's days that I'm like, I can't do this and running away. And then there's days that, to your point, that you're like, okay, they're their own person. They're going through their own things. Like I'm going through my own things. I need to separate the two and approach this with empathy and love. And, for me, I'm like, if it's a very heated conversation, I just like say I need 5 minutes, and kind of walk away, because I feel like if you're adding to the fire, it just keeps on burning. And I just always want to like diffuse the situation. I hate conflict as it is. So it's sort of like, oh, I don't want to dive in here.
Well, your instincts are spot on.
Okay.
I mean, the idea that they're kind of living in this dysregulated state on and off based on their brain development and the culture they're living in and the soup they're kind of swimming in with all these other kids going through these really clunky brain developmental shifts. And they actually need us more than ever to be the steady rock. Now, that does not mean we're Zen moms. Like I actually really want to emphasize that is unbelievably unrealistic, and we are going to mess up a million times a day. And it's not even about not messing up. It's about having that self-awareness of, ooh, I'm not totally, grounded right now. And I think I need to take a beat. And just what you're doing, like, give me 5 breaths and I'll come back.
Mm-hmm.
That I'll come back is really important.
Yeah.
For them to hear it. It's like, it's not sending them a message like, I can't deal with you and you're crazy, because they can't deal with them and they're crazy.
Right.
Right. And so anyway, go on.
No, I love that. Thank you. Thank you. I'm getting brownie points already. I love this. So let's talk about that elephant in the room, right? From an emotional standpoint, like what's really going on with our 2 stages of craziness and how we collide. And I know you mentioned the sandwich, whatever it is, sandwich era, where yes, we have aging parents. Unfortunately, I've lost both of mine, so that happened very quickly. But it's sort of like, yes, taking care of aging parents or adults or whoever is in your life that you love, and raising kids and trying to figure your own shit out, right? Like we're going through menopause. It's like a whole new chapter of life, and what are our careers doing, and are we happy, and blah, 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 blah. So let's talk about like the mother-daughter and like these 2 worlds colliding, and what does this look like, and why is this happening?
It's so good. I mean, not that it's so good, but it's such a good question, because it's so relatable. And so why is this happening? I mean, the one reason that we just know is that we're having children later in life, right? So that's kind of how we got here, because women are, breaking all the ceilings and doing things differently, which is such a huge thing to celebrate. And as women come into perimenopause and menopause, it's like we are actually learning, and you know this better than anyone, we are learning how to really listen, how to listen to ourselves, how to understand our boundaries, how to slow the fuck down, how to, really kind of, if we're doing it awake, how to check that comparing mind, how to really know when to tend to our emotions, and to really kind of learn how to ride the waves of the unpredictability that is happening in our brains and our bodies. I mean, I don't know about you, but my body literally looks different every single day. And I'm like, wow, okay. I am just, and some days I like it and some days I don't. And I'm just like watching my mind and watching my ability to accept and surrender. And then the moments I'm fighting so hard against it and wanting it to be different. Everything I just said is what's happening for the adolescent. Okay. And so it's these mirrors. So what's happening for them is, really starting, I like to really think of it as starting around 9, is when the change starts to begin. I think the average kid going through puberty is like 10 and 11 right now, but 9 is where we start to actually see a kiddo experiencing separation from the family for the first time and identifying not more with group, but just with other in a different way. And they're going through the first stage of like almost like a separation anxiety, because they're starting to have abstract thinking. And that's really where this journey begins. And then we move into kind of 11 and 12, where middle school hormones start to really kick in. And then I would say the hardest years are probably between 12 and 16, is kind of like the heart of it. And that seems like a really long time, but in the big picture, it's like a big blip. So that's where I want all of us to remember this is temporary and we got this. And just like our perimenopause, it's temporary too, and it's going to change. So there's so many parallels around surrender, acceptance, and slowing down. And the reason I really emphasize slowing down is because when teens, their brains are changing so fast right now. And I often use the term that I did not make up, but their brains are being remodeled. There's like a whole like beautiful remodel happening, but it's really clunky. And in that clunky, there's just, as we all know, there's high emotions, there's big reactivity, there's like, not understanding boundaries, wanting extra boundaries, feeling like they're being judged and criticized all the time, even when we're not, or even when we are, because we're critical and judgmental humans just by nature, usually, whether we express it or not. And so they're going through this like massive, massive change. And the reason I emphasize slowing down is because when we actually have the ability to slow down and pause in everything right now, we are going to meet them with more presence. And that is actually where they feel seen and heard, and like they can be a full expression of themselves, which is a message that so many of us girls were not allowed to be.
Yeah. And I love that. I think, what I said earlier about kind of taking 5 breaths or walking away or slowing down. I mean, are there any other kind of simple tricks you can offer listeners to how to keep their emotions in check when they're both running super high?
Absolutely. When I like to really want moms to understand that your main job is to be the safe place for them to land. Okay. That is like what we want to be all the time if we can. Be safety. Now, that does not mean we agree with everything they say. That does not mean we have no boundaries. I mean, actually boundary setting and, them understanding the line of appropriateness and respect is actually all part of safety. But in order for us to actually really be like energetically safe is if we know how to tend to our emotions. So the first thing I always tell moms is I want you to right now think about who are the adults in your life that you can be a fucking mess with. Okay. Sorry. Is it okay that I'm swearing?
Fuck yeah.
Okay. Like I would actually encourage listeners right now to write down 3 names, that are the people you really can say all the terrible things to. I know mine are very clear and there's no judgment in those relationships. Sometimes it's a partner, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it has to be a best friend, or sometimes it's a sibling or a therapist, and it could be all of the above, but it's really like, who can I say those things that I just can't even believe I'm thinking about my kid right now? And those are like the really emotional, harsh, fearful, catastrophic thinking, like worst things you can feel. Because what happens is those feelings are so intense that we often avoid them at all costs and we won't even touch them. And then they will always slip out sideways. And so what we want to start with is a safe place to put our stuff. And I have this one friend who and we will just call and be like, hey, I need a venting sesh. Like, I just need to let it all hang out. And she knows not to try and like counsel me or make me feel better or give me advice. It's just like, let it hang out. So that's key. And that the reason I say all that is because our emotions are real. And when our emotions kind of are taking over, we have lost our adult self. So, but we don't want to not tend to them. So they're like our teenager coming out too, but we need to give her a safe place to be. Okay. So that's one thing. The next piece is to really start to become your own detective of when you start to go offline. And this might be things that people have heard a million times, but it's like, what are your first indicators that you're starting to get dysregulated? And when you start to have that level of self-knowledge, you are so set up for success. And so this is like, I would say take a week and actually pay attention. I know for me, like the first indicator is my cheeks get hot and my voice starts to change a little. It's like weird. And it's before I start having the rapid heartbeats or before I want to yell and throw things. It's actually very subtle. And when I started to learn like the subtle body that was giving me information, it was like, oh, this is my body telling me a big, awesome message that it's time to slow down and go drink some water. And then the next piece is then make a list of what do you do to settle your system. And some of those things are the obvious. We've heard of breath is like always available. It's free. It's this amazing relationship between the lungs and the brain. And the lungs are telling the brain that you're actually okay. If you're slow breathing, you don't have to run. That's obvious. But then there's all these other things like put on your favorite song, calm the energy of the house, light a candle, drink water. Water actually has such a correlation with anxiety and feeling out of control. Do some snapping with like opposite hands going back and forth or tapping. What you're doing there is you're waking up the bilateral system to kind of like ground you. Jumping jacks. Go outside, put your feet on the earth and feel the sun on your face. Like just a moment to really come into your body. And people are going to have a long list of things that work for them. Those are just to name a few. So body recognition, being a detective of your first indicators, and having what I call a fire escape plan. And those are all the things that you're going to do to tend to yourself. And there's this one other thing, and that is something that often people forget about. And this is the thing I actually love the most. And it's to really pay attention to your transitions. Like before they come home from school and maybe you've been working all day or doing things around the house or volunteering or whatever you're doing in the other parts of your life. When they come in, there's almost this contraction that can happen a lot because we don't really know what we're going to get. They might be dumping on you from the day. Most teenagers are kind of negative and complainy. It's like across the board. We don't know why, it just is. And we actually have to somehow prepare for that. So I really love parents to have a couple transitions throughout the day that they are mindful around. So that might mean that 5 minutes before they're coming home, you like lay down and actually put a heavy blanket on and ground yourself and listen to your favorite song. You're not dysregulated yet, but you're preparing. Or maybe it's before you go into their room to wake them up, right before you touch the doorknob, you like take 3 deep breaths and you're like, today I practice kindness. Today I can be patient, whatever the message is. And then you walk in. So it's all part of this theme of slowing down because you're actually being intentional about how you enter their space.
I love that. I mean, these are all great tools. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing. I think we're all, looking for different approaches to having that zen before we interact. For those parents who might not know that they're doing anything wrong, what are some of the mistakes that parents make when trying to talk to their kids, right? About puberty, emotions, or anything really going on? Like, what are some red flags that we should be like, oh, I do that shit?
Okay, let me think. So first thing, we started talking about hormones, you and me, right off the bat. One thing I want parents to really, really understand is that in this day and age, we can't blame the hormones. Girls actually will interpret that as sexist, and they will most likely call you out pretty quick. It kind of goes into this category of blaming and blaming for being hormonal. So I would say take that language out of the home now. You can talk about it with your friends and your partners and like, oh my God, hormones, they're crazy. But what I actually really want you to think about is that the hormones are impacted by the brain development. So it's really about their brains changing. So if you can kind of change that just mindset, it's really helpful. So you asked a really important, like talking about puberty. That's like a huge topic in itself. I'm going to touch on it quickly and then I'm going to go back to your question. First of all, it is 100% our job to educate our kids around sexuality, puberty, bodies, all body parts, pleasure, masturbation, all these big topics that can often make us get a really big tummy ache. So I just want to remind everyone listening that if they don't get it from us, they're going to be getting it from the internet or the friend at school or something. And actually knowledge is power for them. And so when it's time to have, I would make a checklist of all the topics you want to cover. And you're just going to kind of go through them And you're going to have short, sweet, but consistent conversations. Okay. So if, let's say, you have a youngster that's just kind of has no idea what puberty is, like, pull out a book. There's so many great ones. And you can read a book with them. You can leave a book on their bed. You can also, I would say, eye to eye is really great, but have a conversation of like, hey, your body's going to be going through some major changes. I just want to like talk to you about it. And no one talked to me about this. So I might be a little clunky, but we're going to do it anyway. So that's like the early stages. And then it might go into like, hey, we're going to talk about consent and we're going to talk about sexuality for a moment. I want you to know the difference between sexualization and sexuality. Sexualization is how you're objectified as a sexual being. It's all coming from the outside. Sexuality is this beautiful, healthy thing to express yourself. And it doesn't even have to do with sex all the time. It's just a true expression of who you are as a person. And that's enough. Like 3 minutes, like drop a little truth bomb and then open it up for conversation. She might roll her eyes and that's okay. Or they might roll their eyes and then you just read the body language and you're like, okay, we're good. So when it comes to those kind of conversations, I want you to be like dropping little bombs every now and then of beautiful wisdom. One of my favorite lines is like, hey, this is going to be uncomfortable, but guess what? We can do uncomfortable. Because that's actually what we're teaching them more than anything is how to be uncomfortable and still be okay. Because that's what we are learning too. That's what we're majorly learning through perimenopause and menopause. Now and that we can go back to that if you have more questions, but just to answer some of
I have a million questions about that. I'm like, can I hire you to come and talk to my daughter?
Yes. You want to interrupt me? Do you have questions right this second?
No. And it's fine. I mean, I'm definitely ready for the sex talk. So I'm just like having heart palpitations about it myself.
Well, I do give a sex talk that's a
Perfect.
deep dive, and I'm actually in the process of making a video that you can buy off of my website that's just really like how to have these non-cringy conversations and get really clear about your own values and where you're hung up and where you might be a little blocked so that you can actually send her the message that sexuality is a beautiful, healthy part of life.
Oh, yeah.
Some of the red flags that you asked about, like what if we don't know we're doing it? The biggest thing that we moms do, me included, every day, by the way, is we jump to giving advice. And it's coming from a place of love and protection. Because up until the tween years, our instincts, which is where we parented from most of the time, was to keep them alive, to protect them, to like redirect them, to distract them, to keep them from having physical and emotional pain. But sometime around the age 9, when they start having abstract thinking and life isn't one big imitation and big watercolor painting anymore, and the comparing mind kicks in, because that's what happens around 9, is we can't protect them anymore from emotional pain. And it's not our job to protect them. Like I said before, we want them to learn how to develop resiliency around being uncomfortable. And so that instinct to not jump in and save or fix or protect is very, very hard to reprogram. And it's like a new muscle. And the reality is it's actually not only doing a disservice for them when we jump in to fix, but it's also very irritating for them. And they will like let you know very quickly. So if a kiddo is processing or sharing or just wanting to vent about their day, the language I want you to adopt is like a couple ways. Do you want to vent or do you want to problem solve? Just simply putting that out there. Most of the time they're going to say, I just want to vent. And then it's our job to listen. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But usually after a good vent, if they want to problem solve, it's just a timing game. So again, this is the process of, it's not so much that you're doing it wrong. It's more like, let's change up the order of how we do things to slow it down, to give everyone a little more space so we're not jumping in. Another thing I love is, do you need a hug? Do you want to be heard? Or do you want help? The 3 H's is a good one to remember. I did not make that up, but I really love it because we moms need little reminders. We need like limericks in our brain, of like things to kind of pull on, because when we get scared, we rely on what we know, and what we know is how we were parented. And most of the times our parents jumped in quickly to protect.
It's so true. And I was actually just talking about this last night at dinner and saying like, I love that, I'm sure you know my friend JoJo, but I love that my friend JoJo like always says to me when I'm talking to her, like, do you want advice? Do you need me to listen, or do you want a hug? And I was like, wow, so it's not the three H's, but in that sense, like it's been so reassuring and refreshing to have somebody who actually is like, what do you need? Instead of, because women do that anyways, right? Not only with our childs, but with our friends and anybody. We're like, here's how you can fix it. And some people are like, I don't want to, I just need you to listen. Like, I don't need you to solve my problems, or I just want a hug. I've had a rough day. So it's like,
Right.
I love that.
I love that JoJo's doing that. And
Yeah.
I love that you're right, it's relational. It's not just this mother-daughter thing. It's literally with any relationship. And what it does is it gives the speaker some agency, that they actually get to decide and choose, what do I need right now? Because that, especially a young girl that's learning for the first time how to self-reflect and have some inner wisdom, is we're pulling it out of her. Like, you get a choice here. Because there's so many places in her life where she probably doesn't feel like she has a choice, around school, around what's served for dinner, what clothes are in her closet often, or it's like what their family can afford, where they're going on vacation, if they're skiing or not. Like, they're still kind of going along with this, like, I am in the flow of my family system. So when it comes to their emotions and they're asking for help, they get all the choices, right?
Yeah.
So we're trying to empower them.
Yeah. One point that you brought up, which I think is so interesting, is how society is today. And I say that in terms of when you're, saying, like, don't say like hormones are causing your craziness, because they'll like think it's, I don't know what you said, body shaming or, something. Right. So I feel like we are constantly like just walking on like eggshells, right? Like anything I say is going to be misconstrued, or like body shaming me, mom, or, I'm like, oh, wait, like you're wearing that. You like put some clothes on. I can see your whole body. Like, whatever, mom, like you're body shaming me. I'm like, what are you talking about? So what I want to like really dive into and really understand is like how we can have this healthy relationship and communicate. And yes, like we were all raised different. Like my mom was like, don't eat that. You're going to get thunder thighs. So like, I mean, this is like, the era that I was raised in. And when I say one thing, like, maybe not eat that second cookie, she's like, what? You calling me? So how can we like work with them and even with ourselves, right? I'm a bad culprit of this, where you were just talking about our bodies are changing. Of course, like one day I'll be like, what is this over my hip? And like trying to like be a good role model, but also struggling ourselves is really hard, right? So it's like, how do we keep this role model status of like, oh, your body's great and you're amazing, but like we're struggling ourselves, and like how can we communicate them in this new era of talking when we're like, what did I say wrong? I'm not woke. Like, what are you talking about?
Totally. Oh my God. As I'm listening to you, I'm like, oh, it is so hard being a mom right now.
Yeah.
And it is so hard. And we are walking on eggshells. So I think it goes back even further to, first of all, I think everyone needs to actually get really clear about what their family values are. And that should be like redone maybe every year. And I think everyone needs to weigh in, like what's important that this home provides. And you get the kids to actually weigh in too, because you want to know what's important to them. So that's kind of a really nice way to start, because then it gives us a roadmap. And when we get off, and then we all do, kids mostly get off all the time, it's like, hey, does this align with the question, does this statement or this behavior align with our family values? So that's one place to kind of start to map out what's important to you. Okay. When it comes to, like you said, your body's great, and I know you're in the middle of like a jokey place, but like I would say one of the things around teenagers is we actually don't want to focus on external validation, because they're getting so much of it from social media and all the technology stuff. And we're really living in this world of like, is my worthiness coming from how I'm perceived, or is my worthiness coming from the inside? And we want more than ever for them to really understand that their sense of self only comes from the inside. Okay. So when it comes to like body, this is one of the hardest conversations, and we definitely can't do this in a podcast, but we're just going to like touch on it, but it might be its own podcast in itself at another time. But like, I really emphasize teaching a kid how they feel. And, if they're going for the second cookie, I think it's okay to be like, hey, let's just all pause and like see if we're still hungry. Like maybe let's drink some tea and then see if we're still hungry. I think that's okay to kind of model and teach that. But I also think that it's really powerful to not, and to just kind of let them notice like they ate too many cookies and it's like my tummy hurts, and it's like, oh yeah, that's your body telling you really good information. Now you know. And because what we want them to do is listen to their internal powerful voice that's there. It's just when our voice is louder than their voice, then they start to quiet out their own voice. And we want to quiet out all the external noise so that they can hear and feel what's right for them. And the truth is, their bodies are going to change 1,000,000,000,000 times right now. And most of the time, like, unless they're in a place of like some really kind of unhealthy habits, like if the house is just full of like unhealthy food and choices, and there's just not a lot of like mindfulness around food and meals, most likely they're fine. We actually have to get out of this idea that there's one standard of beauty. And that is what they're teaching us right now. The pendulum is swinging so big. And so we're learning from them, like everything. And one thing I work with a lot of moms on is, they're like, God, like, I don't know what to do. My kid's a little fat right now. And one thing I remind moms is that, okay, remember, they always grow out before they grow up, and why is fat a bad word? Like, fat's a descriptor, and we live in a very fat phobic culture. And there's a difference between very unhealthy and like getting in the way of health and having some extra fat on your body that's going to change 1,000,000 times until they're like 22. And then it's going to change again. And then it's going to change when they get pregnant. And then it's like this onward journey. So I want to really emphasize on letting them listen to their voice and what's happening inside. So when they come down and they're dressed in a certain way, before you say anything, you ask, like, how do you feel in that outfit? How do you feel? And if they're like, I feel fucking awesome, then we zip it. And again, then we have to go back to values. If you have values around how your kid dresses, I want you to honor that. But I want you to check yourself of like, is this a battle I'm willing to fight? Or am I going to let them express themselves through clothes? And there's no right or wrong here. It's really what's personal and true for you. But for the parents that are kind of like, you can't wear those crop tops, I challenge them of like, is that coming from you and your truth today? Or is that coming from a fear of being judged by other moms or a fear of someone sexualizing them? Like, let's actually make our decisions based on what feels absolutely authentic, not based on fear.
That makes sense.
I just said a lot of words. Sorry.
No, it makes sense. I guess what's always hard for me personally is, setting these boundaries and having certain, like what you're talking about, family values and things like that. And like of course I'm like, I love that she wears like cute outfits. I'm like, shit, you got the body, wear it, like go for it. But like, there's a certain point where I'm like, okay, if you raise your hands and you can see your boobs, like, no, you need to like wear a longer shirt. So that's like my value. It's like, okay, if you're going to raise your hand in class and you have to hold your shirt down, like, no, like wear something underneath that.
Right. There's a limit.
Yeah.
So some of those other limits I would say is like, are the clothes appropriate for the activity you're doing? Like, is that a school outfit or a concert outfit? Like, sometimes there's a difference. There's usually a big difference.
Totally.
Are you warm enough? Do they still fit you? Are they made by an ethically sourced company? Like, we want them to become critical thinkers and without feeling criticized.
Yeah, that's smart.
And I'm going to lovingly just call you out on one thing. I'm saying
totally.
Total love, because this is something that we do a lot, is when you say you have the body for it, wear it.
Yeah.
Like, what we're kind of, that's going back into the cycle that only certain bodies can wear certain things.
See?
And so that's where we just have to check ourselves, because I have that same mentality from the way I was raised. My dad used to say, who's a wonderful man, would be like, that woman shouldn't be wearing that skirt. And it took me until I had 2 daughters to be like, hey, Dad, she's not wearing that skirt for you.
Yeah.
So shut the fuck up. Totally. And so it's kind of like, let's check ourselves and where we're falling into some really systemic sexism about how a woman is, supposed to fit into this one standard of beauty. And that is lifelong work. And that's just a place where you can check yourself and then say to her, like, wow, I just fell into some old messaging from my family, and I want to do it different. Yeah. And actually, so to go back to when we say something that is like kind of a knee-jerk reaction, because again, when we get scared, we parent the way we rely on what we know. which is how
Mm-hmm.
we were told, then there's always a place to be like, wow, I just said something I wish I hadn't said. I would like a redo. And the power of coming back to a teenage girl with repair and humility is one of the best gifts you can give her.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. I love that. I mean, are there any other nibbles or tidbits, I'm trying to think of the word, of advice that we can give, moms and daughters, and like how to navigate this world together? I know you've given so many great tips already. So I don't, if there's anything else
So
that
many.
pops in
I
your
mean,
mouth.
there's so many, but I want to think of what would be really workable. I mean, for one, I think I want to be really, really clear that we're all going to make a million mistakes every day, and that is so normal and okay. And the repair is always the best thing. So I want you to really hear that. I also want moms to be really gentle with themselves, because this is like, what's the term? This no fame for the weakness or something, whatever. Like, mothering is just really, really hard. And it's especially hard right now. We've never been in these uncharted territory. It's just like, we want to kind of come in with humility and also really clear boundaries. And when we start to trust our intuition and understand our lines, we actually present with more confidence. So we're not walking on eggshells, that we're just like choosing to let a lot go. And then the places you're not going to let go, it's like, whoa, you just crossed the line.
Mm-hmm.
Like, letting them know what the line is, like making fun of you and your clothes, that doesn't fly with me, and it doesn't fly out in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Like, boom, there's the line. Or like name calling, like, you're better than that, But if they're like stomping their feet and being little assholes and slamming doors and whatever, it's like, maybe I'll let that go, because they're just having their own internal battle right now.
Yeah.
So really picking, like everyone says, picking and choosing your battles. The last little thing I'll add is there's 3 things that keep a kiddo from opening up. And those are when a kid feels judged and criticized. In fact, I had a household of teenage girls in my living room the other day, and I was about to go give a talk to a book club group of moms. And I asked the girls, I'm like, what's the one thing you want the moms to know? And they were like, tell them to stop judging us. And I started to do research around that. And girls typically feel judged a lot, and they feel judged by each other, and they feel judged by their moms. And so it's like, how can we actually really learn to postpone our judgments or honor them and work them out on our own rather than projecting them onto our kids? So the other 2 things judgment, feeling judged, when moms catastrophize. So when the kid tells you, so-and-so vaped, and they're just testing you to see how you're going to respond to someone else vaping. And you're like, oh my God, that kid vaped. Oh my God, that's so terrible. Like, they're going to get addicted. And then they're going to start smoking weed every day. And then they're going to be doing cocaine before I know it. Like, we go into future fear-based thinking. We lost the kid. So judgmental language, catastrophic thinking. And the last one, which is kind of an interesting one, is we might have a tendency to over empathize. So my kid comes home and says, Lucy was really mean to me. And I'm like, really? Oh my God, I never liked that girl anyway. And that sounds awful. And I'm so sorry that you had to go through that. And like, fuck her or whatever. And guess what? 2 days later, when Lucy and her friends again, she's not going to be calling me.
Yeah.
We know that.
True.
Right? So if we want to keep the lines of communication open, which is really the most important thing in these times, we want to be mindful of over-empathizing, catastrophic thinking, and judgmental language. So
I love all these tips. I'm so excited to chat with you, and I'm going to be downloading your video. And I went on your website, and we'll tell everybody how to get a hold of you, but you only had like the 9 to 12 and whatever. So you need to have like 14-year-olds, because there was like only 2, like the younger ones. I'm like, can I get in there? But
so I do a middle school one.
Okay.
And what I find is that in high school, the moms start kind of dropping off on seeking guidance in a group setting.
So you do more one-on-ones?
I do definitely one-on-one.
Yeah,
And there's like these 5-week workshops that are one-on-one, and they're actually much more effective for that age, because what happens later is that moms start to feel protective of their kids, and they don't really want to share in group settings as much. And so I'm just noticing that.
Well, that's
I'll be launching things in the fall, and thank you for having me.
Yeah. How can people find you? What's your website? Where's your Instagram? How do we find you?
So my website is just debrubin.com. It used to be Mother Daughter Journey, but I've recently switched it back to debrubin.com just because I'm working with all genders and all parents, and the Mother Daughter Journey is part of my business. I do have an Instagram, but I'm not really using it very much these days, but it's still the Mother Daughter Journey. I might go back to Deb Rubin. I'm kind of playing with that, but there's
Sure.
old reels in there with lots of tips and stuff, but I just sort of decided it wasn't my happy place. So
Yeah,
I'm taking
believe
a
me.
break from that. And I have a newsletter that comes out once a month, and if people want to be on it, they can sign up through my website, and I don't inundate your your inbox, but it's like usually kind of a story and then some really useful tips around different topics. So people seem to find it very helpful and tangible.
Oh,
So
that's so great.
those are the 3 ways you can work with me.
Well,
And I'm taking new clients, and so I would love to hear from you. And I do Zoom and in person and all the things. So
well, I'll be calling you personally because I need to dive into a little bit more.
I would love to support you. So thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yes. Well, thank you all, you and all of our listeners for being here today. And we all know that this is a rocky time for us. So, just know you're not alone, and we're here to support. And I'm always here to listen. Deb's here to give guidance. So whatever that you guys need.
And thank you for doing the work you're doing in the world, because it's really, really important.
Thank you. And that's a wrap on today's episode. Remember, menopause may be a wild ride, but together we've got this.
And don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok at Hot Flash Health.
Stream and subscribe to us on any of your favorite listening platforms like YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
And of course, share your thoughts with us. We love hearing from our amazing listeners.
And until next time, stay sassy, stay fabulous, and keep those hot flashes in check.
Yeah, girl.
Woo!